So we are in day number 22 of the 40-day Red Letter Challenge. That means we're a little more than halfway. And some of you are probably like, this is great, can't believe it's day 22. Some of you are like, man, I'm so far behind. And that's okay. It's okay to re-engage wherever you may find yourself during the Red Letter Challenge. Pastor Nathan already was talking about serving. While serving others won't save you, it may help save someone else. And that is a 2019 variation on what Martin Luther told us. God doesn't need your good works, but your neighbors do. And that's what we're talking about this evening as we think about service. You'll see on the front of your bulletins that you got a fancy word that we don't use too often, but when we do, it's with some sort of precision. We live in a world of reciprocity. Reciprocity, that's a big word. Reciprocity means, it actually comes out from our word reciprocal. And reciprocal means to give in return. So reciprocity simply means a conditional relationship that's established by giving in return. So reciprocity is not just that state or condition, but as we talk about it, as we use that word, it is an expectation. It comes with an expectation that if we give somebody something, we're going to get something in return, and then that is motivating us to actually engage in that activity. We engage for the purpose of reciprocity. Reciprocity tends to presume that. In our culture, we have a popular saying for what we call reciprocity. Anybody know what that is? Scratch my back, and I'll scratch yours, right? Yeah, that's reciprocity. Scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And we've all experienced the unease of this at some point. We've all experienced the unease of reciprocity. This is March Madness. We're in the middle of March. Well, not really in the middle of March Madness. We're now in the Sweet 16. And it used to be, when I was your age, I would look forward to March Madness, and then I would watch every game. So beginning Thursday noon, first weekend, I would watch every game from Thursday noon, first weekend, all the way to the end. And even that first weekend, I would watch every game beginning with that Thursday noon all the way to the Sunday evening of that first weekend. And what we would do as young single adults is we would get pizza. And the pizza would start Thursday at noon. And we would consume pizza after pizza after pizza until Sunday evening arrived after that first weekend. But I can remember one time in which March Madness came around, and I get this phone call from a friend of mine saying, hey, I've got pizza. It's March Madness. I got the pizza. It's on me. Come on over. And I wasn't the only one to get that phone call, but my friends also got that phone call. So we all go over there and fully expecting to engage in March Madness and pizza, and we find out, oh, hey, by the way, I've got some equipment that needs moved out of the garage. I have some furniture that needs moved out of the living room. I'm needing to clear all this out so that next week I can bring a whole bunch of stuff in. How many of you had a friend like that? Yes. That pizza doesn't taste very well, does it? He's working off the principle of reciprocity. I'm going to give you pizza. It's reciprocity. It's a kind of a blind reciprocity. I'll give you pizza, but you've got to do your work first. So we'd buy our first pizza and would not stop eating, and we would not stop tasting that bitter pizza when that kind of thing happened. You do this, I will do this. Conditional relationships and reciprocity are big in the business world. And business really does depend on reciprocity. Business is a transaction. I will do for you this, or I will serve you this, I will produce this for you, and in return you give me your money, you give me something else in return. So business depends on reciprocity. But when we begin to bring reciprocity into kingdom matters, that's where we can begin to get in trouble. Because reciprocity is not always a kingdom value. And our story tonight that we're looking at is part of a large piece of storyline in the scriptures in which the idea of reciprocity is being openly challenged. 3,000 years ago, if we were to go walking into the royal courts of Israel, we would walk into the court, and toward the back of the court, there would be a table. There would be an eating place. This is where they would hold their feasts, the kingly feast, the king's table. Even 3,000 years ago, there was such a thing as the king's table. And if we were to go walking in 3,000 years ago, we would come to that table at dinner time and we would see nobles. We would see princes. We would see princesses. We would see all sorts of grandeur. We would see the finest of the meats. We'd see the finest of the drinks. It would be all about the king and his guests. But if we were to go walking into that particular dining room table of the king, as our eyes scan all the food, as our eyes scan all the greatest of the country, of the nation gathered there every evening, as our eyes see the princes and princesses, would land on a figure that didn't seem to belong. A cripple. Someone who's unassuming. Someone who looks out of place. And our minds would begin to wonder, what's his story? Why is he here? And that's the story of 2 Samuel chapter 9. Wedged in between two chapters that are all about war, we have a remarkable, unassuming paraplegic by the name of Mephibosheth. And we heard part of his story earlier. Mephibosheth was the son of Jonathan. He was one of Jonathan's sons. Jonathan, of course, was the son of King Saul. Jonathan in the Bible is David's best friend. And the story of David and Jonathan is also well known, two of the best friends of the Bible. And David makes a promise to Jonathan, even as they're kids, hey, something ever happens to you, I've got your back, I've got your kids, I'll take care of them, I'll take care of whatever you have. And as the story goes, Jonathan and Saul meet their tragic end in a battle. And in the chaos that ensues, as people are fleeing the scene, the nurse drops Mephibosheth, and he becomes crippled for life. And that's Mephibosheth. Years later, David is concerned that he make good on his promise to Jonathan, taking care of his family. He's concerned he hasn't lived up to the covenant he made. And so he begins asking around, and he's told that Mephibosheth is still around. Mephibosheth is alive and well. So in 2 Samuel 9, David invites Mephibosheth to his table. And David promises Mephibosheth, as we just read moments ago, David promises Mephibosheth that he will always eat at the king's table. Because of this covenant that he has made with Jonathan, his best friend, who is no longer around, Mephibosheth, who is lame and can't get around himself, will now begin eating with the princes and the princesses and the nobles and all of David's mighty men. He will always have a place at the table. And the story concludes with that. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table, just like one of the king's sons. Just like one of the king's sons. And so This is a warm and fuzzy story. Has a great ending, has a good moral to it, has kindness and compassion. And along the way, we're told this is how David treats the unfortunate. And so as we read this passage, typically, we are encouraged, just go be like David. You know, when you see somebody that has had trouble in their life and has had ill come to them, be like David. There's something to be said for that particular kind of reading of the text. Of course, we want to be like David. But if that's all we're getting out of that story, then we've completely missed the point of why the writer of Samuel has included it here in the first place. You see, years earlier, many years earlier, at another king's table was a young boy. A young boy who didn't belong. He wasn't part of the royal family. You know who that little boy was? It was David. Jonathan's best friend. You see, we come to 2 Samuel 9, and we're introduced to this character Mephibosheth, and David is interested in keeping his covenant with Jonathan, and David remembers. David has not forgotten. David has not forgotten what it was like for him to sit at a table at which he didn't belong. So the wonder of David's actions in 2 Samuel 9 is not to provide us with a moral lesson on the way to treat others. No, the wonder of David's actions provides us with a window into the way that David, and by extension, the way we have been treated. It's about Mephibosheth and the way Mephibosheth is being treated. You see, David's treatment of Mephibosheth is upside down. It's shocking. It's unexpected. I mean, even in that day, they knew something was different. You know, in that day, if you were on the losing end of a power struggle, you know where you ended up? The morgue. And that's what you did. One king comes to power, and the first thing that happens is he wipes out the family of the king that he replaced. It wasn't family. It's part of the power struggle. And as we're reading along in 2 Samuel, that has already begun to happen. In fact, it happens again later in Samuel, where some of David's men are taking out Saul's family. So Mephibosheth even acknowledges this as he's discussing this with David. It comes up in his conversations with David throughout 2 Samuel. I should have died. I don't deserve to be living. See, Mephibosheth isn't simply lame. He doesn't even have the right pedigree. He has no business being alive, let alone being in the king's presence. He deserves the death that the rest of Saul's family received. Mephibosheth is undeserving. In fact, he deserves something else. And when he's lame, when he's brought to David, he has nothing. He has absolutely nothing to offer David. Nothing. All he has to offer is his disability and his wrong last name. That's all he can give. So it's against this backdrop then. It's against that understanding of Mephibosheth in 2 Samuel then, that this promise in verse 7 is shocking. It's startling. Don't be afraid, since I intend to show you steadfast love and faithfulness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all of your grandfather Saul's fields, and you will always eat meals at my table. Shocking. It's earth-rendering. It's unbelievable grace. David, again, It's very easy for us to read in these pages, it's a simple Bible story, but remember the context. David has absolute power. Absolute. And some of his enemies, even in the preceding chapters, have already been made aware of it. He has absolute brute power. And on the other side, you've got Mephibosheth, who is in absolute weakness. He is absolutely vulnerable. And in his covenant faithfulness, David is doing the unimaginable. You see, as David offers Mephibosheth grace, there is no reciprocity. There is no giving in return. There can be no reciprocity. Mephibosheth is in no position to give it. Instead, the unworthy, the unlovely, the enemy of his family is given the place of a son at the king's table. He is now sitting, this one who is unworthy, unlovely, he is now sitting with Solomon. He is now sitting next to Absalom. He's now sitting next to Amnon and Chilean and all of the other sons of David as one of them. The lame made a king's son. The simple declaration of the king. When we think about service to those who are like Mephibosheth and the lame, it's very easy then to come to the New Testament, do the same thing, and come to some of the New Testament stories and some of the New Testament passages, and we try to get this lesson on serving others, and we intend to do all that. But then we're confronted with Romans 5:8, which we've also read earlier. While we were still sinners, while we were still lame, while we were still unable, Christ died for us. There's no reciprocity with Jesus. Christ's grace and forgiveness is given to us with no reciprocity. We are the lame. We are the helpless. We are the unlovely. We are the unworthy. We are the enemy. We deserve death. And instead, there stands the King who tells us in our baptism that you are my beloved Son. Come eat at my table. You are my beloved Son. Come eat at my table. Right? Every single one of us, we're all Mephibosheths, dining at the king's table where we don't belong, other than he has declared us to be sons, and we are welcome to his table. So when we think about service, we serve those who can't help themselves because we know that we are just like them. And so we come to a passage like we just read in Luke. When you host a banquet, invite those who are poor, maimed, lame, or blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you. No reciprocity. You will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. We serve with no expectation of getting anything in return, because Christ has already done the same for us and continues to do the same for us. Those we serve cannot repay us, just like we cannot repay Jesus. Make no mistake, this passage in Luke 14, just like any of the other banquet passages, first and foremost is talking about this table here. This is first and foremost talking about this king's table. And our mission as a community is to bring and invite those in need of the same grace and mercy that we've been given to the king's table. That's our mission. Now, it is also speaking of a wider mission. But as we consider that wider mission of helping those and bring to those things that they can't do for themselves, don't we dare engage in that kind of service or engage in that kind of enterprise, first of all, expecting reciprocity. Second of all, giving of our time, giving of our resources, giving of our talents to those less fortunate out of a sense of guilt or a sense of obligation. Over and over and over again in the text, the reason we do this for them is because of what has been done for us. That's the motivation. That's why we engage. We don't do it out of guilt. We don't do it out of shame. We do it out of a sense of who we are. Because you see, we're just like them. We need the same Jesus. The story of Mephibosheth, Christ's story, is showing us another way. We serve those with nothing to give in return because Christ serves us who have nothing to give in return. We serve not expecting anything in return because Christ serves us knowing that there will never be anything in return. So that's our red letter challenge for day 22. Serve someone who can't give you anything back. Find someone in your sphere, whether that be home, work, school, play. Find somebody within your world that can't give anything back and serve them. In doing so, we become mimics of the one who is doing this for us all the time. It's Jesus Christ. Now, how many of us heard Nativity Nights? How many of us heard it? You guys are doing this for free? You're doing this for free? People reaching in their wallet, I'm telling them, put away. No, we do this because the one depicted in that manger has done all this for us. It's free. That's grace. Picture grace. So I pray that as we look for ways to serve, that we are doing so out of a sense where we have and expect no reciprocity. Let's pray. Jesus, I thank you so much for who you are and what you have done for us on our behalf. We couldn't, we can't, we don't, we won't, and so you have to. Thank you for this story, this event in David's life that gives us a snapshot of the way you are with us, and then motivates us to serve others in the same way. Thank you for all you do. In your name I pray.